I have spent years watching the markets, but what we are seeing this morning is a wake-up call that none of us can afford to ignore. If you have been checking your retirement accounts or your 401k lately, you have likely felt that sharp pit in your stomach. The stock market is cratering right before our eyes. In just 1 month, our country has lost 92,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate is climbing. We are no longer just talking about a quiet downturn. We have officially shifted into a full-blown, painful wartime recession. While the talking heads in Washington try to blame bad weather or temporary strikes for these catastrophic numbers, you have eyes, ears, and a wallet that tell you the real story. The escalating Iran-Israel war has sent oil prices soaring, and the economic ripples are tearing through the very foundation of our stability. President Trump has stated there will be no deal without an unconditional surrender, but we must ask, at what cost to the average American? As the conflict involving Israel and Iran deepens, we are forced to wonder if the winning they promise is worth the destruction of everything you have worked a lifetime to build. To understand how precarious our situation has become, we have to look beneath the surface at what experts often call the plumbing of our financial system. Most of us don't think about the repo market in our daily lives, but it is the emergency brake the Federal Reserve pulls when the economy starts to suffocate. Think of it as the lifeblood of overnight lending between banks. When the system fails, the entire economy can freeze in an instant. And right now, that system is screaming for help. In just the last 2 weeks, the Fed has had to step in repeatedly, pumping $30 billion into the market one night, and another $9 billion just as the war began. Why does this matter to you? Because in a healthy economy, banks trust each other. But in an economy rattled by the Iran-Israel war, that trust has evaporated. When the Fed has to intervene this aggressively outside of normal periods, it is a clear sign of a ticking time bomb. It means the institutions holding your savings and your pensions are sensing a level of risk they haven't felt in years. While the administration tries to spin the strengthening US dollar as a sign of winning, we need to be honest about what that actually represents. In the world of high finance, money isn't moving into the dollar because our economy is thriving. It is sprinting there because investors are terrified. They are looking for a panic room, a deep liquid bunker to hide their assets while the Middle East burns. The tragic reality is that as the conflict between Israel and Iran escalates, the global financial map is being redrawn, and not in our favour. We are watching the backbone of a wartime financial order being built on top of massive deficits and military spending. For those of us living on fixed incomes or relying on the stability of the markets we've invested in for decades, this flight to safety is a flashing red light. It tells us that the world is bracing for a long, costly and perhaps irreversible economic shift. The plumbing is leaking, and if we don't demand the truth now, we may all find ourselves underwater before the year is out. We've all seen it at the local gas station over the last few days, those numbers on the sign climbing higher and higher before we even pull up to the pump. For months, we were told that inflation was under control, but there was a hidden truth behind those optimistic reports. Low energy prices were acting like a fig leaf, a thin veil hiding the fact that the cost of almost everything else was still surging. But now, that veil has been ripped away. With the eruption of the Iran-Israel war, the one thing holding the economy together, cheap energy, has been destroyed. The heart of the problem lies thousands of miles away at the Strait of Hormuz. Imagine a waterway only 30 kilometers wide, yet it serves as the jugular vein for 20% of the world's oil. Iran has essentially choked this supply, leaving hundreds of massive tankers sitting idle, nowhere to go. Because of this, crude oil prices have skyrocketed beyond any expert's projection. It isn't just a noisy bump in the monthly data anymore. It is a fundamental shift that is beginning to bleed into every corner of our lives. For those of us on a fixed income, this is especially devastating. You see, when energy costs stay high for weeks and months, it doesn't just stop at the gas station. It seeps into the cost of freight, the manufacturing of plastics, and the entire supply chain of the goods we buy at the supermarket. Every gallon of diesel used by a delivery truck eventually shows up as a higher price on your carton of milk or your heart medication. The administration may try to untangle the signal from the noise, but for the American consumer, the signal is crystal clear. Inflation is no longer lurking in the shadows, it is ready to pounce. As we watch the escalating tension between Israel and Iran, we are witnessing the collapse of our economic shield. We are being asked to pay the price for a conflict that has set our energy security on fire. The reality is simple. When the world's energy supply is used as a weapon, it's the people back home, watching their hard-earned savings evaporate, who feel the heat first. We cannot afford to ignore the fact that as long as the region involving Israel-Iran remains in flames, our wallets will continue to burn. Let's talk about the headlines you're seeing on the news tonight versus what is actually happening in your neighbourhood. They're telling us the economy lost 92,000 jobs in February because of snow and a few strikes on the West Coast. But we aren't children. We know that a little winter weather doesn't cause a catastrophic job decline of this magnitude. What we are actually witnessing is the reality of a sick labour market being pushed over the edge by a full-blown wartime recession. The unemployment rate has ticked up to 4.4%, but even that number is misleading. It doesn't count the millions who have simply given up, or the gig workers who are barely making ends meet. When you look closely at where the growth is actually happening, it is even more concerning. Most of the gains are in healthcare. Now, we all appreciate our doctors and nurses, but in economic terms, that isn't a sign of a thriving, innovative nation. It is a sign of an aging population that requires more and more sick care. We aren't building factories or homes. We are building data centers for big tech and facilities for the elderly. This is why our children and grandchildren are struggling so deeply. In today's America, the average age of a first-time home buyer has climbed to 45 years old. Think back to when we were starting out. That would have been unthinkable. The middle class is being squeezed from both sides, stagnant wages on one hand and skyrocketing costs on the other. And why is this happening? It is because our nation's focus and our precious resources are being diverted. Instead of investing in our own infrastructure or supporting our small businesses, we are pouring billions into the escalating Iran-Israel war. Every missile launched and every carrier deployed in the conflict between Israel and Iran is a massive drain on the American taxpayer. We are funding a conflict half a world away, while our own labour market is bleeding out at home. The truth is, we cannot have a stable, prosperous economy while we are entangled in a seemingly endless cycle of violence. As long as the situation involving Israel-Iran remains the priority over the American worker, these job numbers will only continue to tell a story of decline. We were all waiting for those tax refunds, weren't we? For over a year, the administration and its economists promised that 2026 would be the year the American economy finally jumped back to life. They talked about no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, as if these were the keys to our prosperity. But let's look at the reality behind the curtain. You cannot earn tips when the tourism industry is paralyzed by fear, and you cannot collect overtime when your hours are being cut because the country is sliding into a recession. These weren't just policies. They were distractions from a much darker economic truth. While the average American is struggling to keep up with the rising cost of living, the priorities in Washington seem to have shifted to another world entirely. Instead of fixing our crumbling infrastructure or lowering the price of eggs, the administration is laser-focused on digital currencies and making America a crypto capital. It is hard to find the words for such depravity when you consider the backdrop of this conflict. While they debate the future of private credit and crypto bills, an illegal and costly war has already begun, one that started with the horrific bombing of a girls' school in Marib, claiming the lives of over 100 innocent children. This is the true face of the crisis we are facing. It is a betrayal of the hard-working middle class in favour of military contractors and high-stakes speculators. The financial and moral resources of our nation are being incinerated in the furnace of the Iran-Israel war. We are being told to be patient, to wait for the next refund. Yet every dollar we are promised is being devalued by the minute as the situation between Israel and Iran grows more volatile. The winning they promised us isn't reflected in our bank accounts or in the safety of the world. It is only visible in the soaring profits of those who benefit from the chaos. We deserve an economy built on stability and human life, not on the broken promises of a wartime agenda. As we look at the wreckage of these economic reports, it's clear that we are standing at a historic crossroads. For those of us who have spent decades working, saving, and dreaming of a peaceful retirement, the current path feels like a betrayal of the American promise. We are being told to accept a new normal where our prosperity is sacrificed on the altar of a conflict we didn't ask for. The true tragedy of the Iran-Israel war isn't just found in the volatile stock charts or the skyrocketing price of a gallon of gas. It is found in the quiet conversations around kitchen tables across this country, where families are wondering how they will make ends meet. We are witnessing a massive transfer of wealth from the pockets of hard-working Americans into the hands of military contractors and shadow financiers. We must face the hard truth. The stability of our nation and the security of our ally Israel cannot be bought with the destruction of the American middle class. Strength is not found in empty slogans or risky crypto bets. It is found in a stable, honest economy that puts its citizens first. As the Israel-Iran dynamic continues to shift, we must demand more than just winning headlines. We must demand the truth about where our money and our future are being sent. Our generation has seen enough endless wars to know how they end. It is time we prioritize our own homes, our own workers, and our own grandchildren. We cannot allow the smoke of conflict to blind us to the fires burning in our own economy. Comment "Save our future" if you believe we must put America's families first. Subscribe to this channel if you're tired of the spin and ready for the real story. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and God bless.